The arrival and challenge. They came on a Thursday. The skies above every major metropolis on Earth suddenly darkened as massive vessels materialized in perfect geometric formations. The ships resembled polished obsidian fractals, their surfaces capturing and distorting sunlight in ways that defied terrestrial physics. They positioned themselves with such mathematical precision that military analysts worldwide immediately grasped the implicit message: resistance would be futile. Global defense networks went silent. Communication systems stuttered. For 23 minutes, humanity held its collective breath. Then the broadcast began, simultaneously appearing on every screen on the planet, from military command centers to children's tablets to roadside billboards. People of Earth, announced a being whose form shifted between crystalline structure and luminous energy, its voice eerily perfect in every human language. We are the Zenith Collective. We have monitored your civilization's development for millennia. Your species shows potential, though your technology remains rudimentary. Captain Nadia Reyes watched the broadcast from the bridge of the ISS Tenacity, an aging international vessel that had weathered solar storms, political tensions, and budget cuts over its 15-year service. At 48, the Chilean-born commander had navigated enough crises to recognize an existential threat when she saw one. "They want us cowering," she murmured to her executive officer, Commander Jamal Hassan. Hassan nodded grimly. "It's working." The alien continued, "To evaluate your worthiness for inclusion in the galactic community, we propose a demonstration. 3 of your vessels against 3 of ours. A navigation challenge, a combat simulation, and a crisis response scenario. Should your performance prove adequate, we will share technologies that will advance your civilization by centuries." The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session that lasted 72 hours. Some nations advocated immediate surrender. Others wanted to showcase Earth's most advanced prototype vessels. The debate grew increasingly hostile until Captain Reyes was summoned to address the assembly. "They expect us to bring our most technologically advanced ships," she said, standing before the assembled representatives. Her uniform was worn but impeccable, her posture rigid with resolve. "They are counting on our insecurity, our desperate need to impress. But from what I've observed of their broadcasts, their vessels, and their communication patterns, the Zenith values perfection and predictability above all else." "What do you suggest instead, Captain?" asked the Secretary General, leaning forward. Reyes smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "I propose we bring ships they'd never expect. Not our most advanced prototypes, but vessels with history, with character, with imperfections." Her proposal met immediate resistance. Professor Vikram Kapoor, Earth's leading quantum physicist, stood in opposition. "This is humanity's singular opportunity to join the galactic community," he argued, his voice sharp with disbelief. "We must showcase our most cutting-edge technology." "With respect, Professor," Reyes countered, "this isn't about technology. It's about psychology. The Zenith has studied our conventional responses. They are counting on us being predictable. We need to be anything but." After hours of heated debate, the Security Council made their decision. Captain Reyes would lead Earth's response team with 3 vessels of her choosing. The scientific community was outraged. The military establishment was divided. But Nadia Reyes had a plan. 5 days later, she stood in a massive underwater facility beneath the Atlantic Ocean, looking at the 3 ships she had selected: the ISS Tenacity, her own battle-tested vessel, the Meridian, a Russian ship that had survived a devastating quantum field collapse during an experimental jump, and the Okavango, an African Union research vessel with an unconventional propulsion system that had never quite functioned as designed. "These outdated hulks," Professor Kapoor exclaimed when he saw them. "This is humanity's best hope." "No," Reyes replied evenly. "Humanity's best hope is who's inside them." While the Zenith observed from orbit, believing they were watching Earth prepare its most advanced vessels, Reyes's team worked in the underwater facility, shielded from alien observation. The ship's exteriors remained deliberately worn, but their interiors underwent transformations that defied conventional engineering philosophy. Lieutenant Darius Okoro, a navigator whose rare neurological condition allowed him to perceive spatial dimensions in ways others couldn't, was assigned to the helm of the Tenacity. Once deemed unfit for standard service due to his perceptual anomalies, his unique abilities now made him invaluable. On the Meridian, twins Mai and Jianzhu supervised the installation of a quantum entanglement communication system they had designed, a system deemed too unpredictable for military use because it relied on the twins' almost supernatural mental connection rather than algorithmic precision. And aboard the Okavango, Dr. Priya finally had the freedom to implement her controversial adaptive systems theory, a fluid approach to shipboard operations that conventional engineers had dismissed as too organic and insufficiently structured. They expect us to be like them, Reyes explained to her assembled crews, a collection of brilliant misfits, unconventional thinkers, and those whose talents had been overlooked by traditional command structures. Perfect. Methodical. Predictable. But humanity's greatest strength has never been perfection. It's adaptation. Improvisation. The ability to fail, learn, and try again. On the final night before the challenge, Reyes found herself alone on the bridge of the Tenacity. She ran her hand along a console that appeared outdated but contained processing architecture unlike anything publicly acknowledged. "You think technology is about perfection," she whispered to the absent Zenith. "You don't understand. It's about evolution." A message flashed on her personal device, satellite imagery confirming the Zenith had deployed their 3 vessels for the challenge. Each alien ship was a marvel of engineering, symmetrical, pristine, and radiating an aura of technological superiority that made Earth's most advanced craft seem like primitive curiosities. Dawn arrived with theatrical precision. The Zenith vessel Absolute Harmony descended through the atmosphere, unveiling itself to Earth's assembled dignitaries and billions watching through live feeds. It was breathtaking, a living sculpture of materials that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, maintaining perfect structural integrity despite constantly shifting forms. By contrast, the Tenacity rose from the Atlantic with considerably less fanfare. Its hull, though freshly painted, showed the scars of past missions. Its lines were utilitarian rather than elegant, functional rather than beautiful. An interesting choice of vessel, Captain Reyes, came the voice of the Zenith representative, barely concealing contempt. "We anticipated you would showcase your most advanced technology." Reyes stood on the Tenacity's bridge, her handpicked crew at their stations, each chosen not for their conformity to standard protocols but for the unique perspectives they brought. "We're showcasing exactly what matters," she replied, meeting the gaze of the crystalline being on her view screen. "Shall we begin humanity's answer?" The first challenge materialized on their displays, a navigation trial through an asteroid field that the Zenith had apparently repositioned specifically for this purpose. The winning criteria combined speed, efficiency, and minimal energy expenditure. The Absolute Harmony launched first, its movement so fluid it seemed to slip through reality itself. The Zenith vessel navigated with mathematical precision, following a path so perfect it could only have been calculated through thousands of simulations. The international observers erupted in gasps and applause as the alien ship completed the course in what seemed an unbeatable time. Their navigation was flawless. Professor Kapoor's voice came through on the United Nations Observation Channel. "Captain, perhaps we should reconsider." Reyes cut the feed with a gesture. "Prepare neural interface," she ordered. "Lieutenant Okoro, you're up." Darius Okoro settled into the modified helm station, neural interface electrodes connecting to his temples. Dr. Ne, temporarily assigned to the Tenacity, took position at what appeared to be a standard engineering console but was actually the adaptive systems control center. "Remember," Reyes said quietly, "they expect us to follow their path, the mathematically optimal solution. They've never encountered human intuition." The Tenacity launched with a conventional burst of thrusters, exactly what the Zenith expected. For the first 30 seconds, it followed a predictable trajectory toward the asteroid field. Then Okoro closed his eyes. His neurological condition transformed the sensor data into patterns of light and dimension that only he could perceive. The neural interface translated his intuitive responses directly to the ship's systems, bypassing the need for conventional controls. The Tenacity suddenly veered off the expected course, diving into what appeared to be a dangerous density of asteroids. "What is your vessel doing?" the Zenith representative demanded. Reyes didn't respond. She watched as Okoro's hands moved across the console, his fingers dancing to music only he could hear. The tenacity wove through impossible gaps, using the gravitational pull of larger asteroids to slingshot forward. Where the Zenith vessel had powered through with brute technological force, the tenacity danced. When they emerged on the other side of the field, the elapsed time was displayed for all to see. The tenacity had beaten the absolute harmony by 17 seconds. Silence fell across all communication channels. The Zenith representative's crystalline form flickered, the first sign of imperfection they had shown. "An unexpected outcome," it finally said. "Prepare for the second challenge." Reyes exchanged glances with her crew, a small smile forming on her lips. Humanity's answer was just beginning. The Zenith Collective was about to learn that perfection was no match for the beautiful chaos of human innovation. They came for conquest, but fled when humanity rose. Part 2: The Triumph of Imperfection. The second challenge was a combat simulation using non-lethal energy markers. The objective: disable the opponent's primary systems without causing catastrophic damage. The stakes were clear, humankind's future hung in the balance. The Zenith deployed their second vessel, the Precise Retribution. It was a weapon in ship form, every surface bristling with targeting arrays and energy projectors arranged in mathematically optimal patterns. Each component gleamed with the cold perfection that defined the Collective's aesthetic. Earth responded with the Meridian, its battle-scarred hull making the alien vessel look even more intimidating by comparison. The Russian ship had once been the pride of their space fleet until the quantum field collapse incident 10 years earlier. That disaster had almost torn the ship apart, and would have, if not for the quick thinking of its crew. The repairs had left the Meridian functional but aesthetically compromised, with visible patches and asymmetrical reinforcements. The Jew twins stood at the command positions. Mai at navigation, Jian at weapons. Their controversial quantum entanglement communication system, which had been deemed too unpredictable for standard military use, was now their greatest advantage. The system didn't just allow the ship to respond quickly, it allowed the twins to coordinate with near telepathic efficiency, a biological advantage rather than a purely technological one. "Your vessel appears suboptimal," came the voice of the Zenith commander, a note of genuine confusion in its otherwise perfect tone. Mai and Jian exchanged a glance but didn't respond verbally. They didn't need to. The Precise Retribution attacked with a flawless barrage of energy markers, targeting the Meridian's critical systems in what should have been a decisive first strike. But the Russian vessel wasn't where the targeting computers predicted. It had moved, not by much, just enough to transform direct hits into glancing blows. "Impossible," came the Zenith commander's voice. "Your vessel's reaction time exceeds known human parameters." The twins moved in perfect synchrony, their genetic connection amplified by the quantum system they had designed. Where conventional naval combat relied on predictable patterns and calculated responses, the Meridian danced unpredictably, guided by human intuition that functioned faster than any algorithm. The Zenith vessel adjusted its targeting parameters, launching a second, more precise attack. The Meridian seemed to anticipate the move, rolling in a way that exposed its most heavily armored sections to the incoming fire. "They are learning our patterns," Jian said quietly to his sister. Mai nodded. "Then let's not have patterns." What followed defied conventional tactics. The Meridian executed a series of maneuvers that appeared random, even reckless. Each move seemed to leave it vulnerable, inviting attack, only to reveal itself as a carefully orchestrated trap. Professor Kapoor watched from the United Nations observation platform, his earlier skepticism giving way to grudging admiration. "They are using chaos theory," he murmured. "The twins are introducing controlled unpredictability." The Precise Retribution fired again and again, each attack more refined than the last. But refinement required patterns, and the Meridian refused to provide any consistent data points to analyze. Then came the Meridian's counterattack. It didn't target the alien vessel's obvious weapons systems or propulsion. Instead, it fired a seemingly weak burst of energy at what appeared to be an insignificant section of the Zenith ship's hull. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfect symmetry of the precise retribution briefly wavered, its systems momentarily destabilized by the unexpected approach. "They've identified a resonance point," gasped one of the military observers. "How could they possibly know that?" The answer was simple but profound: they didn't know it in the conventional sense. The twins had felt it, an intuitive recognition of vulnerability that no computer model could have predicted. 3 more precisely targeted bursts, and the precise retribution's primary systems went offline. The combat simulation was over. Earth had won the second challenge. The Zenith representative's crystalline form now showed visible instability, flickering between states in what the human observers recognized as agitation. "Your methods are unorthodox," it finally acknowledged. Captain Reyes, watching from the tenacity, allowed herself a small smile. "That's rather the point." The third and final challenge was announced, a crisis response scenario. The Zenith would create an artificial disaster situation that both sides would attempt to resolve with minimal casualties and environmental impact. The Zenith deployed their third vessel, the Optimal Solution, a sleek craft designed specifically for rescue and environmental intervention. Its systems included atmospheric purifiers, gravity manipulators, and matter reconstruction technology beyond anything humanity had developed. Earth responded with the Okavango, the African Union research vessel that had become infamous for its experimental propulsion system, a system that had never quite worked as designed but had serendipitously led to breakthroughs in environmental adaptation technology. Dr. Priya Ness stood at the command position, her team of environmental scientists and emergency response specialists arrayed around her. What her team lacked in military precision, they made up for in creative problem-solving and improvisational thinking. The challenge materialized before them: an artificial asteroid had been positioned to strike an uninhabited island in the Pacific. The impact would trigger an ecological disaster that would affect ocean currents and weather patterns across the globe. Both sides had 90 minutes to prevent or mitigate the catastrophe. The Optimal Solution immediately deployed a perfect array of gravity manipulators, creating a net that would gradually alter the asteroid's trajectory. It was the textbook approach, elegant, efficient, and entirely expected. Dr. Ne watched the Zenith's response with interest. "Predictable," she noted. "And vulnerable to unforeseen variables." As if to prove her point, the artificial asteroid suddenly fractured into 3 pieces, an unexpected complication introduced by the Zenith to test adaptability. The alien vessel paused momentarily, recalculating its approach, then redeployed its gravity net with adjusted parameters. "They are good at optimization," Ne observed, "but they need complete data to function effectively. Let's show them a different approach." The Okavango's response appeared chaotic at first. Rather than attempting to stop all 3 fragments, Ne's team focused on the largest piece while deploying the ship's experimental adaptive field, originally designed as a propulsion system, in an entirely new configuration. "What are they doing?" demanded Professor Kapoor from the observation platform. Captain Reyes, who had joined the observers for this final challenge, smiled. "They are not trying to stop the disaster," she explained. "They are trying to transform it." The Okavango's adaptive field enveloped the 2 smaller asteroid fragments but made no attempt to alter their trajectory. Instead, it began to change their composition at the molecular level, transforming potentially devastating impact material into compounds that would disperse harmlessly in the upper atmosphere. Meanwhile, the largest fragment, now targeted by conventional deflection methods, was slowly nudged toward a precise point in the ocean where its impact would create a temporary upwelling of nutrient-rich deep-sea water, actually benefiting the marine ecosystem rather than harming it. "Impossible," came the Zenith commander's voice. "You have transformed a crisis into a benefit." Dr. Ne couldn't resist responding this time. "That's what adaptation means. Finding opportunity in challenge. It's what life on Earth has always done." As the scenario concluded, the data was irrefutable. The Zenith's approach had successfully averted disaster, but the Okavango's solution had not only prevented catastrophe but had created measurable benefits to the regional ecosystem. The third victory belonged to Earth. The Zenith representative materialized aboard the Tenacity, its crystalline form now visibly unstable, shifting between states in what seemed like the alien equivalent of agitation. You have succeeded in all three challenges, it acknowledged, but through methods we find disconcerting. Captain Reyes stood before the being, flanked by Lieutenant Okoro, the Jew twins, and Dr. Ne, humanity's unlikely champions. You came expecting to find either worthy pupils or easy conquests, Reyes said. Instead, you found something you don't understand. Your technology is inferior, the Zenith stated. Your vessels are damaged, asymmetrical, imperfect. By all objective measures, you should have failed. That's because you measure the wrong things, Reyes replied. You value perfection. We value adaptability. Your civilization has reached its apex, the pinnacle of what's possible within your value system. But there's a fundamental flaw in perfection. Explain, demanded the being. Perfection is static. Once achieved, it can only be maintained or lost. But imperfection. Reyes gestured to her crew, to their mismatched vessels that had triumphed against all odds. Imperfection drives evolution. It creates the conditions for growth, for adaptation, for transformation. That's the true power of humanity, not what we are, but what we're capable of becoming. The Zenith representative's form stabilized slightly, suggesting deep consideration. Your species is unique in our experience, it finally admitted. We have encountered many civilizations, but none that celebrate their flaws as strengths. They are not flaws, Dr. Ne interjected. They are variations. Diversity. The raw material of adaptation. The being seemed to process this concept with difficulty. We came to evaluate your worthiness to join the galactic community, it said finally. We now understand that our criteria were insufficient. Does that mean we passed? Asked Lieutenant Okoro. The crystalline form shimmered in what might have been the alien equivalent of laughter. It means, Lieutenant, that we must reconsider what passing entails. Your species has much to learn, but perhaps, its form flickered again, we have something to learn from you as well. Within 24 hours, the Zenith fleet began to withdraw from Earth orbit. Not in defeat, but in what their representative described as strategic reconsideration. They left behind a single communication device, a means of contact for when humanity was ready to engage in dialogue as equals rather than subjects of evaluation. On the observation deck of the Tenacity, Captain Reyes stood with her unlikely crew, watching the last of the alien vessels disappear into the upper atmosphere. They came looking for perfection, Reyes said quietly, but fled when they found something more powerful. Human messiness, suggested Commander Hassan with a smile. Human potential, Reyes corrected. The infinite possibilities that arise from embracing our imperfections. As news of humanity's triumph spread across the globe, old divisions began to dissolve in the face of this new cosmic perspective. Nations that had been at odds found common ground in the recognition that Earth's greatest strength lay in its diversity, of people, of ideas, of approaches to solving problems. The ships that had saved humanity, the Tenacity, the Meridian, and the Okavango, became symbols of a new philosophy that rapidly spread through scientific communities and governance structures alike. Perfection was no longer the goal. Adaptive resilience was. 6 months later, Captain Reyes stood before the newly formed International Space Adaptation Agency, addressing representatives from every nation on Earth. The Zenith will return, she told them, not as conquerors, but as curious equals. And when they do, they'll find us changed. Not perfect. Not uniform. But stronger in our diversity, wiser in our acceptance of variation, and infinitely more adaptable. She gestured to the view screen behind her, where construction had begun on a new generation of vessels, ships that incorporated lessons learned from the Zenith encounter but remained distinctively, proudly human in their approach. They came seeking to test our worthiness, Reyes concluded. They left questioning their own definitions of worth. That is humanity's gift to the cosmos, the beautiful power of imperfection, the strength found in adaptation, and the infinite potential of beings who are never finished evolving. In the depths of space, the Zenith Collective was engaged in something they had not done for millennia, internal debate. The human encounter had introduced an element they had long ago engineered out of their own civilization, doubt. Perhaps, their leaders now considered, perfection was not the ultimate achievement. Perhaps there was something beyond perfection, something the curious, flawed, endlessly adaptable humans might help them rediscover. They had come for conquest, but fled when humanity rose to show them a different way. Not a better way, not a perfect way, but a way forward, into endless possibility.